But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. How's everybody doing, chat? Bonsoir, Adrien. So, if you heard last night, we had started watching a long discussion between Francesca Fiorentini and Cenk Uyghur. Oh, you hit the notification bell. That's good, good, good. I love the notification bell when it's being hit, especially when it's being hit for my stuff. So we see, Cenk of the Young Turfs had gone to a white nationalist meeting and comprehensively shot the bed. And he was very proud of that, in the bit that we'd seen. I mean, like, he was talking about how he'd managed to spread it all over the duvet and the pillowcases and stuff. And he thought he'd done a really, really good job because he sucked up to Nazis. And the Nazis patted him on the head and said he did well. So he said that meant that they were very welcoming. So, I mean, I kind of wouldn't mind continuing on with that one, because there is quite a lot of it to go, and it was just really starting to kick into high. We've also got, now, one of the people who was mentioned. Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. The little face fuck. Another thing that it was actually mentioned in the discussion we were watching yesterday was Kyle Kulinski, who has actually also expressed concerns about all the right-wing shit that, and the sucking up to the fash and everything that Cenk and Anna-Transphobia have been doing lately. And so that's also an option. Hey, River Rune. So, personally, I'm kind of torn between those two. Between Kyle Kulinski talking about the right-winging of TYT and the continuing the debate between Francesca Fiorentini and Cenk Uyghur. I love all the all caps too. Ooh, bakery. How's that going? That sounds like getting up very early is the main thing that immediately comes to my mind. Because if you bake the way, like, a bakery does, as opposed to the way I do when I just get up whenever the fuck I feel like it, and then bake. And do share any interesting recipes in the Discord. I'm always interested. Ooh, the pastry tea. That's something that I've been wanting to learn properly. So, well, why don't we at least start out for a while with continuing what we were watching yesterday, because I think that was just really getting going properly.
Cenk, where they're like, damn, yo, we crushed so hard.
Oh yeah, she was explaining where we left off. She had been explaining how she'd asked Cenk, who dodged the question, which is all he's been doing this whole time, and looking like he's sucking on a grapefruit. She asked, what would we be saying? What would, like, sort of leftist, progressive kind of types be saying if fucking Fucker Carlson decided to, like, try to make the rounds of leftist content creators hat in hand and suck up to everybody? And Cenk dodged the question, and she's saying, well, obviously what we'd be saying is, holy shit, we killed it. With this guy's basically, like, waving a white flag. So that's where we left off.
When on my show, I'm like, who the hell? Started reaching out and wanting to talk and wanting to come to agreement on things. What would that look like to you?
Yeah, it would look like Tucker was trying to reach out. Tucker's a bad example because I would be surprised if he did that. But okay, yeah, no problem.
What would it look like to you?
I wouldn't. And do I think that Tucker would be selling out? No, there's no chance.
No. Well, I'm not. It's not about selling out. What would that like? What would it just seem like? Hey, man, we can agree. Yeah, you know what? I did say that Kamala Harris was a DEI hire and she's basically a communist, but now I just feel like I've antagonized you and I'm here to like break bread and let's talk and let's get stuff done. What would that look like to you?
It would look surprising, but I wouldn't care. I'd find it interesting.
Why? I mean, and the thing is, the far right has actually been doing this sort of thing for a long time. Like, there is, like, entryism, far-right groups and far-right people trying to sort of worm their way into left spaces goes back a long, long time. Yeah, because, I mean, and it's pretty obvious why it's something that's good for them. It suits them because if they can get somebody who is, like, progressive on board, they can kind of avoid, like, they don't look like quite as much the ghouls that they actually are. They don't look like such complete scumbags. Finding some, like, clueless, liberal, progressive type to suck up to and connect with is a good strategy because it gives the far right legitimacy that they can't get any other way, because on their own merits, they're a bunch of scumbags. And the thing is, we've got a lot of experience with this. I mean, like, going back literally about 100 years. And it never goes well for the people on the left, because the people on the left end up getting covered in all the fucking slime from the fash. And, the fash end up winning a whole lot of legitimacy from it. So it would not be as interesting as all that. And actually, Tucker Carlson is somebody who is an example of somebody who does that.
What does it look like to you?
I mean, to me, if Tucker Carlson did that, I'd be like, oh, we fucking won. We won like crazy. We won so resoundingly. He's doing an apology tour because 3 ghosts visited him in the middle of the night and he's completely changed his tune because he wants to throw down with the winners. We are crushing it. And I saw in that moment, you want me to play it for you?
I mean, I have to say, if she's wrong, he has taken a strategy for proving that I wouldn't necessarily have taken. Because, I mean, as I said last night, there's like literally, if you find yourself on a platform with some prick like Charlie Kirk, the only thing for it is to fucking pants him in front of the entire audience, everybody in the room and everybody at home, and just totally embarrass them in ways that will lastingly damage their credibility in general and with the assholes that have selected themselves into their audience. That's literally the only even theoretically legitimate thing you could do in that situation. And instead, like, he was just fucking giving him a foot massage.
We're glad Cenk's here, everybody. And that was the feeling that I think a lot of right-wingers have when they look at you, Cenk, where they're like, damn, yo, we crushed so hard, even this guy is turning now.
Yeah, except I'm not turning. I've said it 2,000 times.
I'm just saying what it would look like. I'm just saying what it would look.
You're saying it like it's true when it isn't remotely true. But okay.
Well, I mean, and I think there's something to be said for that, because the thing is, he's always been a lot more reactionary than a lot of the people who watch him. And what he's really doing, what's being left out of this so far, and I hope that she gets into it, things she said about the Democrats in this last campaign, this fucking bed-shitting festival that they ran out, make me think maybe she'll bring it up. But the thing is, he was doing the transphobic shit right around the time that the Democrats were starting to really just basically get on team transphobia in a more open way. As they were making this sort of, not a really right-wing shift in terms of what they do, but certainly in terms of their messaging, that became particularly evident during the campaign. And, I mean, he really kind of telegraphed that. When I saw that, I'm pretty sure if I go back, I mean, I'm going back through all my 2024 streams to put together this greatest hits compilation for 2024, and I'm pretty sure I called it. I'm pretty sure, like, on one of the first ones we watched, where it was like anti-transphobian and birthing people and that shit, and I said, given how close this guy is to the Democrats, and given that he basically sees himself as sort of the propaganda vanguard of the Democrats, if he's doing this, I feel like that's designed to give the Democrats space to move right in their messaging. I feel like I said something like that. I feel like I called this.
Address it. So, okay, number one, you're empirically wrong, because guess what's happening? Matt Gaetz has reached out to us, Tucker Carlson, to come on our show.
Fucking Matt Gaetz? Why the fuck would you want to have him anywhere near there? Fucking, okay, let me get this straight. Anti-transphobian, like, one is, like, scared, thinks that, like, trans women are some kind of threat to her. But fucking Nazi nonce-fuck Matt Gaetz might be coming on the show? And that's not a threat to anyone? Like, you keep your fucking kids away from him.
And so it's your exact analogy, okay? Patrick Bet-David, etc., etc. And they won. They're still trying to come on the Young Turks. Why? Because they're trying to have a conversation, not because they want to do an apology tour. They think they are ascendant, but...
Well, no, they think they see what you're doing, Cenk. They see that you are looking to move into the right-wing griftosphere, and they're testing the water to see just how far right they can take your platform. That's what they're doing, because you have a big platform, and you are signaling that you're willing to consider meeting Nazis halfway.
Nonetheless, they want to talk to the left.
But had
you're not the fucking left.
Because they think that
your version of the left says, no way.
Yeah, exactly. There is absolutely no reason that anyone should want to talk with fucking Matt Gaetz. Like, as I said yesterday, it's one thing to try to... There's a wedge that's opened up thanks to this whole Brian Thompson, United Healthcare thing, between these right-wing ghouls and a lot of their audiences. And it's one thing to try to drive that wedge in hard and reach out to those audiences and say, these guys that you are watching and supporting on their Patreons and whatever else the fuck are really giving away the game with this. They don't like you. They're going to screw you over because they will always be on the side of insurance CEOs before they're ever on your side. And that's why they promote all the racist shit that distracts you from who your real fucking enemies are. It's one thing to do that, and I think that is a useful thing. That is a worthwhile thing to do. But like bringing the grifters onto your show, sharing a platform with the grifters for purposes other than humiliating them? No, fuck that. That's absolutely worthless. That legitimizes them. And when he goes like, and look at everything he's saying here, like, oh, the Nazis are more welcoming. They're not all racists. and acting like it's unreasonable to say, yeah, we don't break bread with fascists.
To the other side. But we're not authoritarian.
Jake, that's not true.
We're not authoritarian. You're not allowed to disagree 1%, but we're not authoritarian.
Nobody's saying that. Like, I mean, and this 1% thing, I mean, it's such a cute thing because it doesn't make any sense. Like, anyone can... he avoids making it about actual issues, actual matter, you know, what the disagreement is about. He's doing this like you can, like, neatly quantify this. You can't disagree 1%. Like, okay, chat. We're all a bunch of commos here. Let's say you get somebody, he comes into chat, you know, and says, you know, seems pretty sincere about it, and is like, you know, I'm not really sold on the whole communism thing, really, but a lot of what you say makes a lot of sense, and I want to learn more. That's somebody who, I mean, this quantification scheme makes absolutely no sense, but I would say that is bigger than 5% or 1% or whatever bullshit number this like model that he's using would assign. You know, that's a pretty big disagreement. But would we? I mean, would you be? I would not be on the page of telling that person to fuck off. That's someone, as far as I'm concerned, that would be worth talking to more, because it sounds like they are. It sounds like they are interested and are interested in learning more about, you know, what we're all about, and maybe actually agree more than they realize, because that happens quite a lot. Because people have all sorts of misconceptions about what, like, communism and anarchism and anarcho-communism, whatever, are. See, I don't think we would be chasing those people away. Is that, chat, would you agree with me on that? Is that somebody you would say, that's somebody you could talk to? As opposed to somebody who would be like, you disagree 1%, so fuck off. Or whatever the fuck Junk's over there doing.
We have no power, so we're not authoritarian. So that's not how it works, Franny.
He's not he's against authoritarianism. He's so against authoritarianism that he said he would not allow leftist creators to do authoritarianism. The king of liberal progressive YouTube has spoken.
And the establishment Democrats are also authoritarian. So what do they say? You must agree with Kamala Harris, otherwise that's it.
Yeah, and what have you been doing? You've been moving right to agree with her. Yeah, exactly. You would want to know more. I would. If somebody like that shows up and says, you know, they don't know a whole lot about it, but a lot of the stuff that, you know, that a lot of the stuff that they're reading or that I'm saying or whatever makes a lot of sense to them, but they're not kind of sold on the whole revolution thing or something like that, and they seem like they're sincere, that's somebody I want to spend time with. Like, that is exactly the sort of person I feel like it's important to talk to. Because, like, obviously, how else are you going to, you know, grow a fucking movement? At the very least, even if they end up disagreeing, we make sure that they're disagreeing with something, they're really disagreeing with the thing, and not disagreeing with something that they've been lied to about. You know? So, somebody like that you'd want to talk to. I mean, that's why this is such nonsense, because he's saying, we know what the 1% or the 5% or whatever. Yeah, I know, and it's really weird to me, because my mother's cousin used to, like, make fun of her by calling her that. There was a little rhyme that went with it, and I'm not going to say it on here. But I hear that, and it's weird, because, like, that's literally the only context I've ever heard Franny. Yeah, but, yeah, I think that is exactly what he's doing there. He's exactly doing that.
A heretic, and you're being driven out from the party. You know that. The establishment Democrats have done that to us.
No, they fucking haven't. Like, what have they done that on? I mean, people have actually said to, like, Pelosi, for example, you know, supposedly the Democrats are the party of abortion rights, and yet you have all these anti-choice motherfuckers whose campaigns you're funding. What the hell is that? And she goes, oh, we're against litmus tests. And then you have, like, supposedly the only reason that we don't have all sorts of good things, like abortion rights right now, is that 2 Democrats in Congress just wouldn't go with it, wouldn't have it. And a lot of people were saying, a lot of libs were saying, come down hard on these motherfuckers, and force their hand, do what you have to in order to get them to change their fucking votes because this matters. And they're like, nah. Like, this is literally what the Democrats will, on the other hand, give you no end of shit if you come out to the left of them, like Rashida Tlaib, for example, who I have to say, not a fan of electoral politics, not a fan of electoral politicians, definitely not a fan of Democrats, but like the one of my sort of Bechdel tests of like a leftist in sort of a fucking like mainstream electoral party or whatever is that they're willing to publicly criticize the reactionary shit that their own party does. And she's like the first one that I've actually seen in the Democrats of all these like left Democrats, progressive Democrats, the squad, whatever you want to call them, who's actually done that. That is like a minimum standard for like maybe this person isn't completely full of shit. That is not, that nobody, you know, you shouldn't take that as being like very high praise. It's a low bar, but it's a bar that literally nobody's even trying to jump other than her. And only on the one issue.
For the last 20 years, don't tell me that there's no power on the left. There's tons of power on the left.
Who are you counting as the left, Cenk?
And when the swarm comes, the left-wing swarm, oh, you like to call the woman, you racist, fascist.
Oh, no, wait. Okay, now he's just doing a dishonest transphobic thing. I mean, what's even more dishonest about it here is that he tries to make it about, like, people who are accusing Anna Transphobian of racism for throwing that fucking shit fit over birthing people. That choreographed shit fit that she threw twice in order to try to get the responses she needed in order to claim that she was some kind of a victim. And, like, literally, this is just so dishonest, and he knows perfectly well that this is bullshit. Because nobody was objecting to somebody wanting to be called a woman. Most of the people who are a lot of the people anyway, who are criticizing Anna Transphobian for her bullshit, are people who actually also prefer to be called women. The people for whom terms like birthing person exist are people who don't want to be called women because they're not women.
Hey, transphobe! What? I'm not authoritarian. No, that is a...
Wait, okay, so it's authoritarian to point out when somebody says something bigoted? That's authoritarian now. So if you just point out when somebody says something shitty and bigoted and bullshit, that's authoritarianism. But when you come down like a fucking brick wall on a former employee who's trans and says that they cannot work for you given the transphobic shit that one of your main like on-air people is spewing, and you come down, you just come down like a ton of shit on them, that's not authoritarian.
It's an authoritarian mindset. Just you don't have to have power to have an authoritarian mindset. And there's different versions of power. There's the shunning power. There's the...
What he means is, like, you're not supposed to point out when somebody's bigoted because it makes them look bad, because that's a shitty thing to be.
There's social media power, there's media power, there's political power, there's all sorts of different...
I mean, and the most ridiculous thing about this is, like, when we talk about, like, any of those kinds of power, any kind of, like, social capital, social media power, reach, all those sorts of things, he undisputedly has more of it than literally any of the people criticizing him. Yeah, I mean, he has this huge-ass network, and the reason so many people are, like, falling over themselves to pull their punches and act like, well, maybe you didn't know, but there are these people called trans people, and it hurts them when you do this kind of thing. The people who are doing this thing that you're doing, actually, they're doing it. They know perfectly well it's bullshit, but they're trying to hurt trans people, and you're doing that, and I thought you should know. And the reason they're doing that, the reason like the one person who would actually like really be just go all in and say what needed to be said was Illuminati. When fucking Anna Transphobian did that, was precisely because fucking the Young Turfs is an extremely influential platform, and Cenk is a very influential person, and he's made a bunch of people's careers.
Power. So look, guys, the left. First of all,
there's also just money and actual power.
Money and actual power. And when you talk about money and actual power, again, yeah, I can see why Cenk doesn't want to talk about that, because he has some of that.
It gets back to the we. So you asked me politically, who do I represent? I represent the great majority of left-wing voters.
Left-wing voter. I mean, except, what the hell does that mean? Because the thing is that the minute you start making it about voters, you're already skewing right-wing and wealthy. Because likelihood to vote maps very closely to income. Like, the more money you have, the more likely you are to vote. So the minute you make it about voters, rather than about, like, people on the left, or say the working class, or some, like, defined constituency of people who you can, like, actually identify clearly, you're already giving a lot away.
The great majority of left-wing voters are not pro-establishment. They get tricked by mainstream media into voting in that direction. It drives me absolutely nuts. But when you ask them about policies,
what does he mean by, he's been using the word establishment a lot, and he's never really given an example of establishment versus non-establishment, except I guess we're supposed to assume that he's, like, not the establishment.
Agree with us completely on policies, right? And the great majority of left-wing voters are not far left. They think a woman should be called a woman. And
nobody's saying this is such bullshit, and I hope she's going to call him on it, because nobody is actually saying that he knows perfectly well this isn't what this is about. He knows it because fucking Anna Transphobian herself pointed out, like 11 months before she did her like public fucking shit fit over this, that she knew what it was about. This is like,
I'm not saying that in some dismissive way.
Yeah, you are though, and you're saying it in a very dishonest way. This is extremely sleazy.
Favor of trans rights.
You know you're not though. You made that very clear. Like like a few months ago, he was talking about how, trans rights, that's okay, except maybe not like in access to sports and stuff. Maybe we should not like do that. He's not in favor of trans rights. And if he were in favor of trans rights, he would be pointing out exactly why the thing he just said was bullshit, rather than saying it.
If you want to be called a birthing person, we love it. We got no problem with it. You be called a birthing person.
Like, the point is, for anyone who is confused about this, and I doubt that anyone watching this is confused about this, that not everybody who is capable of getting pregnant and giving birth is a woman. That some of them are non-binary, some of them are trans men. So if you're going to broadly address medical information to the entire population of people who can get pregnant and give birth, then you need a word other than women, or you're excluding some of them. But he knows this perfectly well.
But when you say no, you call everyone a birthing person.
Which is, nobody's saying that. This is just so fucking dishonest. And I'm really, really, really hoping that she's going to actually give him some shit over
hates
that.
It. Left-wing voters hate it.
I just want to say,
no crime. Left-wing voters hate it. So,
actually, you'll find that the transphobia thing is what voters in general are not cool with. I mean, not just whatever the hell he means by left-wing voters, fuck knows what that is, but voters in general, like, are divided between being low-key scared about the attack on trans rights and the way that so many far-right politicians, and now the Democrats, are obsessed with hurting trans people and saying they don't really care, this is not an issue that they should be dedicating so much time to. And he knows perfectly what this is happening, and he's doing this at a time when trans people are under massive fucking attack. Like, this is not forgivable, and this is not, like, disagreeing 5% or whatever the hell he said, 1% he made it later. I mean, this is throwing an entire very marginalized community under the bus. For what exactly?
I'm standing up for the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters and left-wing voters.
I hear what you're saying.
No, you're not, though. And, like, you're lying to them, too.
I'm carrying sides of the left saying, you're not allowed to disagree with the establishment.
No, what? Nobody's saying you. What establishment? What fucking establishment? Because it's hard not to notice that it was when the establishment in the Democratic Party started signaling that they also want to join in on this attack on trans people. That he and Anna-transphobians started attacking trans people.
You're not allowed to disagree with the extreme left. No, I am allowed. I am allowed. And
nobody's saying he's not allowed. Like, he's doing the exact same bullshit that, like, Tim Pool and all the right-wing ghouls do, where they act like they're being censored if somebody says, yeah, what he just said is bullshit.
Wait, please. I don't want to lose the forest for the trees here.
I mean, this is why I feel like I need that clip from My Cousin Vinny where Joe Pesci gets up and he's supposed to be giving his opening address and he goes, everything that guy just said was bullshit. Thank you. And then sits down. I feel like I need that clip for moments like this.
Truly. And I hear what you're saying. I know...
She's not going to call him out on that because what he said was extremely dishonest and just bigoted as fuck.
Can feel online like a circular firing squad. I understand.
Billion%. It happens every time.
I know.
All these wonderful percentages. Now it's 1 billion %.
Oh, it does. I come from movement backgrounds, right? I've been in many spaces since the global justice movement in the early 2000s, then the anti-Iraq war movement. I've been in a lot of organizing.
Wow, okay, she looks a lot younger than that.
Spaces. I have been in more organizing spaces, far left spaces, than I have in campaigns, political campaigns, for example. So I know those spaces very well. I know we can often over-police one another. I know we can...
Yeah, see, this is really... In response to what he just said, I feel like this is conceding things that shouldn't be conceded. Because what he said was extremely dishonest. He just straight up lied.
I absolutely concede that. I do.
You shouldn't.
At this moment...
Because that's not what this is to do with. That is, like, totally not what this is about. And the power dynamic, like... He's also her fucking employer. Her career... I didn't know this until we were watching this. Her career is, at least in significant part, thanks to his platform. He has actually a lot of power in there.
Sad to say, that's not the biggest fish we have to fry. In fact, we're in, again, a moment just before Project 2025 will be implemented, and people like myself, people who are on the streets demonstrating for Palestine, will be recommended for deportation, among many other things. But of course, I guess maybe I'm using that as a shield. I don't know.
Oh God, because he was saying that because she was pointing out that the people that he is sucking up to want to kill marginalized people and openly say so. He said that she was using marginalized people as human shields. I mean, which is just such a very, I mean, that's such a Hasbara way of doing things.
According to you, but I did want to ask Cenk before this. I want to ask you about who the establishment is.
I was hoping she would ask that because he keeps on saying it, and he's never given an example.
In your mind, who is the establishment and who is not the establishment?
Great question.
Im Grunde genommen ist vor allen Dingen ein Opportunist.
So, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris.
Oh, so he's saying that, like, far leftists, the far left, whatever he means by that, the extreme left, he called it, he said, he said that they're the ones saying you have to agree with the establishment. Yeah, because if there's, Chad, I think we can all agree on this. There's one person that we all feel that, unconditional allegiance to, it's fucking Nancy Pelosi.
Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, all the corporate Democrats who take corporate
money. The ones that you're sucking up to by specifically moving to the right on trans rights.
Serve their corporate donors 100%, lie to us 24/7,
and have absolute power over the entire party apparatus to the extent that you can even say there is a party apparatus.
Never intend to do any progressive policy positions, never intend to do any democratic policy positions that they state in campaigns, and are backed by the liars in mainstream media pretending that they're on our side when they're playing good cop, bad cop with establishment Republicans.
I have to say, he's describing his own playbook at the moment.
And robbing us blind on behalf of their donors.
Do you think that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are establishment?
So...
Okay. Show of hands, chat. Do you think this is going to be a flat no? Do you think this is going to be a definite yes? Or is he going to hedge? Are some of the richest, most powerful people on the planet part of the establishment, he's been asked. Is he going to allow as how yes, actually they are?
So they're complicated. The reason they're...
No, they're fucking not.
Complicated is because they act like the establishment, they do the same robberies, the same corporate...
This is not why they're complicated, this is why they're not.
Tax cuts, but they are pretending to be populists. And that's why I've called Donald Trump a fake populist hundreds of times. Right? And I've called him a fake populist on right-wing shows. And I've said, hey, watch...
Which is, that is such a useless thing because, it does not actually mean anything.
For your own donors on right-wing shows, right? And so, but they're not part of this, the machine that was the Borg, Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden.
Yes, they fucking are, though. And not just of the, Republican machine, either. It's trivial to find these motherfuckers being, praised and wined and dined by the entire political class. Because they're money, and money doesn't stink. It doesn't matter what they stand for.
Co-captains of the Borg, and that machine was unstoppable.
The whole point of the Borg is they don't have captains. It's just a collective.
And that machine
So he's getting Star Trek wrong here, too.
Maintains corporate rule, and that's my mortal enemy. That Borg is the one we should all be fighting against.
So do you think it's less bad that one person donates $277 million to a candidate versus 5 people donating $277 million to a candidate? Elon Musk gave $277 million to Donald Trump and is now, again, worth $400 billion. Is that somehow less?
Well, that figure... It was before the value of Twitter started taking a nosedive shortly after he took it over. There is some question about whether he's still worth that much.
Establishment in your mind?
So there's 2 parts of it, Franny. One is they at least talk the populist game, and the advantage of that...
See, this is, again, why the word populist needs to just get beaten up in an alley, thrown in a bin, and incinerated someplace. Because it allows people like this, grifters like Cenk, to avoid actually making an ideological description, giving any kind of definition to it. Because it allows him, and people like him, to sort of put leftists and Nazis in one category, which is very useful for which is very useful for Nazis and very useful for people who want to smear leftists, and absolutely worthless for basically anyone else.
That is that also spread through the right-wing base. That, hey, them faking populism, remember, the people that are hearing that message don't realize it.
See, he thinks it's encouraging, he was saying, we saw yesterday. He thinks it's encouraging that a lot of the Nazis who back Trump and love Elon Musk are pissed off because Trump and Elon Musk have said that H-1B visas are actually kind of useful because they allow you to enslave immigrants. When they want to just kick all people who they do not consider to be, you know, proper, worthy of citizenship. So basically anyone who isn't, like, white, out of the country.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they're talking anti-war, they're talking anti-corporate. You see Tucker Carlson...
No, they're not talking anti-war, and they're not talking anti-corporate. Tucker Carlson is an excellent example of this. He's talking anti-Semitism. He is, I mean, when you actually listen to him, and you actually pay attention and aren't trying to make excuses for him, what he is just doing anti-Semitism. That is literally all he's doing. And this is I mean, what gets me about this is, this goes back to a lesson that a lot of people had to learn the hard way after Occupy. Because a whole lot of fash, including a lot of fash who are now prominent, got their start in Occupy. And they showed up, you know, because it was sort of politically amorphous anger at Wall Street. And the thing about being angry at finance is that Nazis have the cheat codes for that. They're very good at being angry at finance. And if you aren't listening carefully, it sounds like they're legit on the same side, and their problem is with, you know, the fact that, like, Wall Street ghouls get to fucking regulate themselves and screw everybody over or whatever. When in fact, the whole reason they do that is to take anger at capitalism and bottle it up and divert it and make it about Jews.
Anti-corporate. You see Steve Bannon saying we should increase corporate taxes. That doesn't mean Steve Bannon is an angel, but what it does mean...
what it does mean is the proof is in the fucking pudding. The proof of the pudding is in the fucking eating. And a lot of people realize... A lot of, like, ruling class ghouls realize they have to at least pretend to be willing to make rich people pay tax. And a lot of the time, first of all, it's not just a matter of making them pay tax just because. The point of it is, the reason anyone cares about it is because we have shit healthcare and it would be nice to pay for good healthcare. Because we have schools that are falling apart and it would be nice if they weren't. And it would be nice if there was money to do those things. So the idea isn't just, like, make rich people pay tax. It's use those taxes for useful things that would benefit us. And so, like, if fucking fash ghoul fucking Steve Bannon says maybe corporations should pay more tax, yeah, what does that mean? What does he want to use that shit for? Does he even say? Probably not. And the Democrats have been playing this game for a long time. Barack Obama would do that. He would cut all sorts of, like, just survival programs for working class people, and then say, yeah, but look, the rich are going to pay, like, fully $1 more a year in taxes now on average,
or anywhere near it. But what it does mean is that idea of populism and anti-establishment, etc., is spreading throughout the right wing.
Like, is she talking to him through a time rift? Because we had, this happened, in, like, 2016, and it wasn't new then.
That is an amazing opportunity.
No, I mean, what he sees as an opportunity and what the opportunity he sees and the opportunity that's there are very different things. Because what he sees as an opportunity is to make alliance with Nazi grifters. and to suck up to them and work together with them and do collabs with them. And, it's like, well, we both agree that rich people should pay at least a little bit more tax. So obviously, who cares if who cares if the other guy also wants to kill all trans people and, exterminate all the Palestinians or whatever, which are things they also want. Because, there's this sort of agreement in principle over a trivial increase in tax for rich people.
For us to actually coalesce on economic populism that they now believe in, even if
no, they don't now believe in it. See, this is more bullshit. And if you pay attention to polls, not how they're reported in media, not how they're misrepresented in a lot of executive summaries, but actually read the questions and the answers, the demographic breakdown. This isn't a new thing. This is not a new thing. Going back to, the first years of Reagan, you can see that most people were saying the economy, including most people who vote Republican, were saying the economy is rigged, it exists to make a bunch of rich ghouls rich and screw over everybody else. That is a position that is just kind of the default for most of the population and has been for 2 generations now at least.
Their leader doesn't, right? So that's point one, and it's super important.
Yeah, but what you do then, if the idea is to point out that their leaders are actually lying to them and not doing the thing that they think should be done, is you fucking humiliate their leaders. You publicly expose them. You take the wedge between them and their leaders and you drive it in there as hard as you can until none of them can actually look their so-called leaders in the eye again anymore, because they see what scumbags they are. Well, not just personal grievances. They're about clout and money and proximity to powerful people.
Point two is, in some ways that individual corruption is worse, and in some ways it's better. So how is it worse? So Miriam Adelson gives, $137 million to Trump, and Sheldon Adelson had given him $200 million in previous campaigns. So he delivers foreign policy to the Adelson family, right?
Right.
Moved our embassy in his first term. Now he's thinking about allowing the annexation of northern Gaza.
And let's just remember, he is not really in a position to allow or not allow the annexation of any part of Gaza. The IDF cannot stay in the same place for any length of time in Gaza, anywhere in Gaza, without getting blasted, without getting fucking Yassins up their asses. Not to mention, let's just remember that Biden has not done anything to meaningfully oppose those things, and Kamala Harris never showed any sign that she was going to do anything to meaningfully oppose it.
And the West Bank, and you saw me fight tooth and nail against Trump, because that's what I was really, really worried about, that he's going to go and be extreme and radical to serve his top donors.
Here's the thing. Foreign policy is the area where there is really the least variance in the political class in the U.S. And you can see that with Trump in his first term. You can see that with the things that Trump did and were just taken from then on as the default in Biden's half of the Trump administration. Biden was sort of the second Trump administration, really, when you get down to it. Every single taboo that, Republicans breach, whether it's under, Bush the second or Trump or whatever, ends up not really being that much of a breach of a taboo, and it ends up just being accepted. And because it is fundamentally within the same ballpark as existing policy. U.S. imperial policy has remained fundamentally the same, with variations that are very much a tactical matter in particular situations for generations. That is like the least movable thing, and that is part of why like politicians and the political class as a whole were freaking out over this election, because suddenly an issue of so-called foreign policy was a major election issue, namely the genocide, and the fact that everybody in the race supported it.
On Elon, he handed all of domestic policy to him, so that's how it's worse. How in the world could it be at the same time a little bit better? Well, the way that it's better is that it's not a machine, it's chaotic.
But it is this is what's such nonsense. It is a machine. It is a system. This is why talking about corruption is such nonsense. Because the reason, corruption makes it sound like we're talking about deviations from the way the system's supposed to work. And what we're actually seeing is this is how the system works.
So it's one guy here and another person there, but the other person disagrees with Miriam, and then Trump doesn't quite know what to do, and he listens to the last person in the room, but he also kind of listens to his base. We've got chaos there. And chaos,
no, there isn't chaos there.
Chaos is way better than a machine. A machine is ruthless and just steamrolls you.
So I think that's
nothing worse than the McConnell-Biden era. Nothing.
Okay, I do want to talk about the McConnell-Biden era and establishment a little bit more, but just on that, I feel like my very first question to you is, well, what are you doing?
That's a good question. What the fuck are you doing?
I feel like that's the most cogent answer I've gotten from you that I could sort of get on board with, which is exploit the chaos to turn MAGA against Trump.
Which is exactly the opposite of what he's actually doing. Because again, I mean, it's pretty obvious what you do. If you want to if you want to use the wedges that are there. I mean, the big one right now is, again, the perforation of the former CEO of United Healthcare, which a lot of these chuds, chud stands, they're actually kind of cool with that, and the people they listen to and support and like and subscribe and donate to and all that shit are like appalled. What you do is you expose those people for the grifters and class enemies that they are, and you do it in a way that they can see, and then they say, oh wow, fuck those people. In the optimistic scenario, they say, oh wow, fuck those people. Ich kann mir das eigentlich überhaupt nicht vorstellen, denn ich weiß auch nicht, worüber sie sich streiten würden. Also, so viel weiß ich über den Kevin ja eigentlich gar nicht. Also kann ich mir das eigentlich nicht vorstellen.
But even if you wanted to do that, I'm not sure you're achieving it through the kinds of interviews that you're doing and the way that you're...
Yeah, by sucking up to the people that he's supposed to be, that he just said the idea is to alienate from their grifters.
Playing to the right, especially when you go on those stages and hit the left more than you do the right. But I just want to leave that there. I accept the, hey, let's, plant the booby traps so that we can make them fall into them later, that kind of thing.
Yes, the idea is that, but what Cenk did is he just shot his own bed.
Makes the most sense to me, even if I sort of strategically disagree with it. I want to talk about the establishment, though, and Mitch McConnell. So, for example, Mitch McConnell, who I am no fan of, obviously, believes that there should not be recess appointments for the Trump administration. Would you say that that is establishment, ergo you are anti that?
Yeah, this is, here we go, because this is why, talking about the establishment is actually kind of useless. Because what the hell does it even mean?
An anti-establishment.
Anything can be anti-establishment.
Mitch McConnell is against recess appointments.
Yes.
So that was a super tough one, because sometimes the establishment will block something. Like if Bernie was president and he wanted to put in Stephanie Kelton as Treasury Secretary, I actually would disagree with that. But I put that as an example. The establishment would say, no way, and they would block it with everything that they have. There is a scenario where I would say, Bernie, do a recess appointment, right? And so, on the other hand, if Bernie came in and said, I don't care about advice and consent of the Senate, I'm just going to do everyone as a recess appointment, I would say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not a good idea.
I mean, and this is one of the annoying things about, and one of the reasons liberalism is kind of useless, because it's about the process more than it is about the result.
Why? Because it's anti-democratic. Was that?
Yeah, the core of
Sure.
So
I mean, on the assumption that there's anything democratic about the U.S. Congress anyway.
Brandy, the core of the question is, when we talk about the system, what do we mean by the system? Because there's
Oh, is he going to explain what he means by the system?
two different systems that people refer to, and then they conflate them. The system we want to protect is democracy, the
How do you protect it? We haven't got it.
Constitution. So
Actually, I mean, why do we want to protect that? It actually kind of sucks. It's actually kind of fucked up, maybe, that the supreme law of the land is one that literally nobody alive and nobody in living memory has ever had any meaningful say in.
civil rights, etc. That's the system that we love and believe in. The system we do not want to protect and we want to fight against is donor money, establishment, protecting the establishment.
Wait, he's trying to say that these are like two separate things, like you can separate the fucking US Constitution from from all these shitty things that this regime, that are like fundamental characteristics of how this regime works.
Protecting corporate rule. So separate those two things out.
You can't separate them out. Like, the Constitution is designed, like, the reason that companies have this level of power is precisely because the U.S. Constitution gives a whole lot of protection to property.
Because the permanent system of the Constitution and democracy is great.
No, it isn't. It actually sucks, especially the fact that the U.S. Constitution is almost impossible to amend. Like, okay, in Ireland, for example, in the 26-county Free State, there was an amendment in the Constitution that had been passed in the early 80s that banned all abortion and a lot more than that. They had a referendum a few years ago and they got rid of that shit. There's no explicit provision in the U.S. Constitution that says that, like, men and women have equal rights, for example, which is like a given in other constitutions.
The current system of corruption and establishment rule is horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just like, and when I listen to this, it's like, does he genuinely believe you could separate those things out? That you can have the one without the other?
Do you understand that the right actually just conflates those two things?
I think the left often conflates those two things.
Well, that's because it's the system we're talking. It is that they aren't two things. You're not. It's the same picture.
Well, okay, so you would be in favor of Donald Trump doing recess appointments, or you wouldn't in this case?
Yeah, he didn't answer that question, did he?
So if he's doing blanket recess appointments, I'm against it. I always think shoe on the other foot. That's why I brought up Bernie Sanders.
But what about results? Like, any recess appointments he's going to make are going to be bad. That's a given. They're going to be shitty. Like, there's absolutely no doubt that whatever he does, it's going to be bad. Unless it's just a pure accident because he is incompetent. And he surrounds himself with a lot of fairly incompetent people. But other than that, it's going to be bad. And that kind of should matter.
Hey, how would I feel if it was the other way around? If he does one or two, I understand it as a matter of philosophy.
Yeah, see, this is pointless.
Okay.
But if
Well, like, because you're talking about it completely in the abstract without talking about what's actually at stake.
Does a recess appointment, I'm very likely.
Because here's the thing: whether there's advice and consent of Congress or not, most of us have absolutely no say in the matter. Like, literally, it's a question of whether, about 10 people get to make the decision, or whether a few hundred people get to make the decision out of 330 million people who mostly have absolutely no say in the matter. Like, I mean, one is not meaningfully less democratic than the other, really.
To be against that particular person, like a Kash Patel or Pete Hegseth, he's going to do recess appointments on the most radical culture warrior stuff that I hate. I hate when the right does culture war stuff. I don't love it when the left does it.
I mean, see, here we go. It's like the right doing culture war stuff, the left doing culture war stuff, and he doesn't want to talk about what it is, because if he talks about what the actual stakes are, and he really loves to avoid talking, I mean, if you wanted to have a teetotaler's drinking game, you drink whenever Cenk actually acknowledges what's at stake. Because the culture war stuff is like, at the moment, for example, whether trans people are allowed to fucking exist or have to flee the country in the dead of night.
But I certainly hate it when the right does it. And so I'm worried about his recess appointments because of the people, the specific people that he's likely to do that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Here we go. He actually kind of almost acknowledged the actual stakes.
One of those things also in terms of this establishment and anti-establishment sort of framework that you're using is also Project 2025 and Russell Vogt, who he just appointed to be the head of the Office of Management and Budget. Russell Vogt would like to fire federal workers, replace them with loyalists. He also wants to use the military to target political dissidents.
And that latter thing, I mean, that sounds bad. I think it's also unlikely. First of all, you have to remember the military's been in a recruiting crisis for years. Like the cops, too. They both are having trouble recruiting. But instead of like changing the rules to allow the military to do like domestic police repression duties, the response has actually been over the years to militarize the cops. And that makes perfect sense. Because the thing about the military, I mean, no fan, but they are like specifically trained to kill people in other countries. And a lot of the time, these stories, you see them occasionally. Like, ex-military, was in, like, Afghanistan or the occupation of Iraq or whatever, and becomes a cop. And ends up getting fired because he's less trigger-happy than the cops. Because, again, they are not trained specifically to target people from the places they're from. They're targeted to murder people in other countries. They're trained to murder people in other countries. And so they're not necessarily psychologically suited for the stuff that cops do. That's why you have Cop City. All of these they're like 60 of them either in development or in planning or being built. And the point is to train cops in urban warfare tactics. Why? So they can do the stuff, since nobody actually seriously thinks that the military would be a good option for this. No, I mean, not just because they're not suited for it, they're not really psychologically suited for it, but also because you would end up spreading them really, really thin. Like, who's going to occupy Syria and Iraq if you're bringing all of the military back to deal with fucking protests here?
This is all obviously in Project 2025 that he helped to author. Is that establishment or anti-establishment? There's nothing more anti-establishment than firing a bunch of federal workers. Do you believe that that's a populist thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if this is her point, but she is really exposing how empty these fucking terms are.
No, it's fake populism. And so it's so alluring to the MAGA base because they feel like, oh, we're fighting against the government, right? But what I'm trying to get them to understand is, like, you guys, they think that the government is a blanket bad thing. And
except, not really. I mean, they love the cops. They really love the cops. They love the cops, especially when the cops are killing black people, it turns out. Because one of the big things, actually, for Trump voters in polls is white supremacy and white identity and stuff. I mean, if you actually spend any time trying to understand what these people stand for, you see just what complete nonsense Cenk is putting out here.
So the story I often tell on these shows is the one that Matt Stoller does. Great progressive, done great anti-monopoly work in the Senate, etc. Which is, hey, what size pipe should I get? And people always ask, and that's why Matt does it this way. Well, what job are you doing? It depends. And that's exactly the point that I make to these right-wingers. Do we want big government or little government? Well, it depends, right? Are we in...
I mean, again, just with the accepting the right-wing framing.
Invading Iraq, then I want smaller government, right? Are we going...
What does that mean? Invading Iraq, yes, but with less government? I mean, and actually, when you look at the way the occupation of Iraq developed, it was very much small government because they ended up using a huge number of mercenaries. Like when Barack Obama declared for the second time the end of major combat operations in Iraq, what they did for the most part was replace troops with mercenaries. Private sector. So that's small government. Is that good? Like, this is such a meaningless way of talking about anything.
Going to invade doctors' offices and get between a woman and a doctor, then I want smaller government, right? But if we're going to protect the average American...
This is why this is useless, like... Because it's not a matter of how big or how small, it's a matter of what you want it to be doing. Like, I mean, this is why this is such a bullshit way of posing the entire issue.
From the bankers, then I want a little bit larger government. I don't want to defund the police on Wall Street, right? So
there is no policing of Wall Street, really, though.
So I explained that, hey, if you fire...
Like, if there are cops on Wall Street, they're there to beat the shit out of, like, unhoused people and protesters who are there to oppose all the fucking rich ghouls on Wall Street.
People that are at the IRS, guess who's it's going to help the most? The very rich who cheat on their taxes.
Except, again, that this is an interesting example because Biden did hire a whole lot of IRS agents, and he also changed I mean, to say he changed the priorities isn't quite right, because it didn't fundamentally change. It was more of an incremental thing, and they moved the enforcement priorities in the direction of ultra low net worth people. Gute Nacht. Like, in other words, like, even more in the direction of hurting poor people. Just because you hire more fucking IRS agents. Yeah, he is just as bad as choosing his examples as Kevin. He has, like, he has, like, personality unlike Kevin.
But they all want to audit the Pentagon, which the IRS doesn't do, but it's very interesting that, you got everyone to cheer auditing the Pentagon. But of course, the idea of auditing billionaires, the Republicans are absolutely against that because they've been trying to defund the IRS. Exactly.
Right.
Well, they're kind of, again, they're also sort of fine with the IRS doing what the IRS mostly does, which is making life difficult for working class people.
Again, there's different layers of right wing now. There's their leaders who are...
What layer of right wing are you, Cenk?
Almost, uniformly full of crap. Then there's, a middle bureaucracy, and then there's the voters. And the voters, if...
Yeah, but the people he just said that the people that he's talking with, the people he was sucking up to on that stage at fucking Turding Point, USA, are uniformly full of crap. Which they are. I mean, he's not wrong about that, but then why are you sucking up to them when you should be embarrassing them?
Franny, you don't have to trust me on this, because you know.
Oh, yeah, in fact, you shouldn't trust him on this. You shouldn't trust him on any of this. He's been very dishonest throughout.
Those MAGA guys, they will tell you exactly what they think. They're not holding anything back.
Yeah, I mean, they're also very welcoming, remember.
They have no need to lie to you.
Yeah, they've been telling us for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have, and it's another reason that maybe sucking up to them isn't a great idea.
So they're also not lying when they say they're anti-war, anti-crime.
Yes, they are, though. In fact, if you because and a lot of not only it's not also that they're not lying, it's also that they don't understand that the things that they want involve endless war. Like, necessarily, they involve endless war. You can't get the things that they are for without it. When they say they're anti-war, they don't mean they're anti-race war. They're fine with that. They're fine with, like, war on trans people. They're fine with maintaining a low-intensity war against black people in this country. Which, I mean, so when you say, it's like, he is so willing to when it's Nazis, he's so willing to just suspend all disbelief and just believe anything they say without, like, looking the gift horse in the mouth at all.
Corruption. They might have been misdirected, but they're not lying. So what I'm trying to get them to see is firing the federal workers is not the answer.
Yeah.
Cutting the Pentagon is part of the answer.
And that's also not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so when they say yes to cutting the Pentagon, they're not lying. The MAGA voters actually want to cut the Pentagon.
What?
I mean, but the thing is, why is that what you're going to be? Why don't you also talk about why the whole racism thing is a grift that is meant to divide them and get them to side with their class enemies and stuff like that? The whole transphobia thing, similar. Because Cenk's actually kind of okay with that stuff.
What their leaders will do is a completely different question. And so one more thing that's super important, though. It's not a booby trap, Franny. I understand.
Okay, like, she had just tried to come up with a way to describe his strategy, such as it is, that made it sound good. And booby trap made it sound good. And now here he is disavowing that. It's like when Nancy Pelosi did that weird-ass clap she did, and memes came out saying that actually she was clapping sarcastically for Trump, and this was a huge victory for #the resistance. And she came out and said, no, that's not what that was, that's just how I clap.
I understand what you're saying, and that's one way to frame it. But in my mind, when you have people who actually agree, you're not tricking them. You're just getting them to see, guys, you wanted to cut the Pentagon, but look, your leaders didn't cut the Pentagon.
Yeah, and, what's your fucking strategy? Because the Democrats aren't going to do that either. The Democrats have been dumping huge amounts of money on the Pentagon, and on the cops, and all that shit. Like, I mean, but the only thing he's got, his only horizon is electoralism. And so he has absolutely no solution. And so, I mean, he's just looking for another cow to milk.
So do you see how they led you astray? Right? I'm actually getting them to they're...
No, you're not. Like, sucking up and telling Nazis how welcoming they are is not getting them to recognize anything. He's doing the exact opposite of the thing he himself is saying ought to be done.
Showing them that their leaders are not doing the things that they promised. On the other hand...
They know that. They don't need to be shown that.
Sometimes Trump responds to his base.
And the thing is, they do a lot of the things that they promise. Like, they promise, because these voters, they want more racism. And these leaders always deliver it. They want misogyny. These leaders deliver it.
So if that base gets angry enough and says, hey, let's cut the Pentagon, maybe Trump does cut the Pentagon.
No, he doesn't. That's not going to happen.
Biden never would, McConnell never would. In the Biden-McConnell era, the Pentagon's only going to get increased forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, okay, and how much did the Pentagon budget go down by under Trump last time?
Corruption is always going to increase forever and ever and ever.
I mean, wait, just on this.
An advantage for us is that he likes to be popular. He just doesn't know how. So,
sure. So I just.
Well, no, he knows how to be popular with the people he cares about, and it's by being really, really bigoted and racist and transphobic, and sucking up to Nazis like Cenk does.
Really want to just drill down on a couple of those things. and then there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but just on this new MAGA, old MAGA thing.
Which is bullshit. Let's just get ahead of that. There is no such thing as new and old.
I've heard you say new MAGA as you talk about anti-corruption.
No, which is bullshit, because, I mean, if you actually, all that stuff was there. In fact, I mean, Caitlin Johnstone, who's a Nazi grifter who gets an undeserved amount of support from leftists who don't know her background. She was selling this line that Cenk was doing back in 2016, saying the left needs to ally themselves with the anti-establishment right against the deep state, and and she wrote a whole thing about how the left really needs to understand that Nazis are their friends and they can fight the deep state together. I mean, and yeah, like anti-corruption, all this bullshit, that is not new MAGA. This is like far-right staples going back even before MAGA was a thing.
Anti-war.
I mean, again, this isn't new. I mean, I heard a lot of like very naive leftists talking about, well, at least Trump is anti-war back in like 2015, 2016. Hey, Badger, I hope everything's all right.
Cenk, they were like that in 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, let's be honest. The reason Donald Trump just destroyed the Republican primary was absolutely being an outsider, right? And sort of purported, seemingly anti-establishment, even though, he's a billionaire, part of the elite.
He literally is the establishment.
But it really was around being against the Iraq War. Now, for his reasoning...
No, it was not really around being against the Iraq War. I mean, okay, within the primary, that probably played a role, because one of the moments where Trump said the quiet part out loud was when he did give a speech in, 2015, 2016, saying that the Iraq War was not based on mistakes and all this bullshit. He said, quite correctly, it was based on lies. So yeah, okay, maybe within the context of a Republican primary, that might actually be true.
Thing was, we should have taken all the oil, F those, whatever, enter expletive, right? Which I think gets to another point. But he was also, remember, in terms of the corruption stuff, they wanted to get rid of what...
Yeah, he was talking about draining the swamp.
What was it? They wanted term limits. They had term limits and were suggesting them...
And that isn't even a Trump thing. That was something that was part of Newt Gingrich's contract with America in the 1990s.
Early on, so...
And it didn't work out because it was unconstitutional.
The outgrowth of an entire country tired of 8 years of Bush and endless war, and also that was, suffering from the 2008 financial collapse and didn't have any faith in the banks and these financial institutions and all the politicians that protect them and that was already in the ether, right?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, again, you could see all this stuff, like the far right milking these themes in order to, get clout in Occupy. She meant enter slur.
And you had a Bernie Sanders, and you had Donald Trump. And, of course, the actual establishment, the centrists that I hate as well, were trying to say Bernie is exactly like Donald Trump. Look at him, he's using the same...
Well, not exactly, because Sanders was just there to make people think, making, working-class, normal people think that the Democrats had something for them. And was never in it to win, has never been in it to win. He has a very nice little deal with the Democrats, has since the early 90s. It's why he basically gets to run unopposed for his seat in Burlington. Whereas Trump was in it to win.
No. They were very different. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about the differences between right-wing populism and left-wing populism. I think there is a difference, and there's a very important difference. That difference is historical as well.
I mean, and I really do hope that somebody's going to bring up the fact that Trump voters, one of the things that they rate very highly as a matter of things that they consider important to them in polls is white identity. They're very big on white identity. They are white supremacists.
Right-wing populism often feeds off of nativism, off of othering immigrants, religious minorities, blaming those people, and then we can have the socialism, right? That's why, obviously, in Hitler's Third Reich, you've got a National Socialist Party.
Yeah, and you can see Cenk going up to him, being like, you guys are so welcoming. The left cancels me because I lied about trans people and said shitty things, but you aren't canceling me.
Right, this is Germany for the Germans, and there are people who are in Germany, are the Germans, and people who are not the Germans. That also, in this country, although you scoff when I talk about Chinese Americans, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act, specifically dividing working class people in this country based on race, saying the Chinese are the reason you don't have anything. They're the ones taking all of our jobs, even though we know that the rich robber barons were absolutely taking advantage of them, just like we know that all the Trump donors who paid for their positions in this administration are also taking advantage of undocumented labor. So do you see a difference between right-wing populism and left-wing populism?
I mean, I have to say, wait, all of a sudden we have Russian subtitles. How?
And are you not barking up not just the wrong tree, but a very, very dangerous one?
I mean, I have to say the pushback was soft, and again, we keep on talking about power relations, and what I did not know about Francesca Fiorentini until this I started watching this, is that her career is at least in part thanks to the mercy of Cenk. She got her start on the TYT network too. She basically works for him. She's got this other thing that she does, but she also works for him. And that is why there's so little pushback. And the pushback is very soft occasionally. Because we could actually go a little bit farther. And so when we talk about what's called right-wing populism, what that is just a euphemism for fascism.
No, I think there's a massive difference. And so first, let me just really quickly address what you said about the Chinese. So Chinese were the only nationality ever banned from America.
No, they're not the only nationality ever banned from America. They're one of a handful.
Trump considered a Muslim ban, but didn't actually execute one.
Yeah, he did, actually.
Chinese were actually banned from America for a long time.
There was also a ban on Japanese people. And not just during the war.
Long time. So I know all about racism against Chinese, and obviously that also sprung up during COVID, etc. But I just...
And in fact, scaremongering against Chinese people is one of Trump's big things. Oh, I'm glad to hear you're both doing better.
That heated moment there, I was saying that the Chinese, are maybe third or fourth in line these days. Muslims and
not from what they're talking about. I mean, I'm just looking at what they're saying, which is this would be.
Well, no, and it's interesting that they're kind of leaving out the combination of the obsessive attacks on trans people in the U.S. with the Democrats just getting out of their way and saying, we don't give a fuck about them either. Go for it. That is kind of the fucking elephant in the punch bowl. It's the turd in the room here. And, I'm finding it actually is kind of irritating me that isn't coming up. But this is a 2-hour debate that we're not going to finish tonight because it is time to start wrapping up. Yes, he's, yeah... at this point she probably could, but who knows what kind of money they're bringing down on their pay. Probably more than me. Probably more than me, although that doesn't take much. Though I am very much appreciative of everybody who is actually donating there. That has actually gotten me out of some very difficult situations, and yeah, especially in the past couple of years, because it's been a bad couple of years for me. And if you'd like to join in my Patreon to support this stream, why don't I tell you where you can go to do that? Thank you, Nightbot. In any case, thank you for everyone who joined in. I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I was really sorry to hear that you'd been in urgent care in the Discord right before I was getting started and everything, and I'm glad that seems to have worked out halfway okay, I guess. If you want to talk more about it, the Discord is certainly open to you. And I will be back next week at 11:30 on Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And meanwhile, I am continuing to work on the Greatest Hits compilation for 2024, which there's a lot of stuff to go through. I mean, literally, if you watched all of it back to back, it would take you a week. A little bit more than a week. And I just want to also thank everybody. Oh God, nothing to be sorry about. I think it's unfortunate. You had to do what you had to do, and if you just reload the stream in just a couple of minutes, you can watch it from the start. I'm also, you can see, 55% of the way to fully funding the Inessa Armand Translation Project, and also moving apace towards finishing the last of her essays and speeches, after which I'll be working on the on her correspondence that we have available. That's all publicly posted on my Patreon page if you want to check that out. That is actually kind of the main thing you find on my Patreon at the moment. I haven't posted much else there in a while. There is other stuff there, though. There are, like, writings of mine. In any case, thank you to everyone. Have a good night, and I hope you have a decent week. And I